What's up, weirdo? Shadetree Surgeon here, up at the Ride Factory in Ybor City, and today we've got an episode that is pretty near and dear to my heart. Today we're talking about FXRs. So you want to buy an FXR. Now we're going to talk a little bit later about differences, model years, and changes, and what you can expect in the world of owning a vintage Harley Davidson from the 80s, which is it's a whole different experience, let me tell you. But today we're going to start with an FXR that's for sale. So you want to buy an FXR, you can buy this FXR. So here's one of the things about FXRs. It is so rare to find them unmolested, and while this thing does have a custom paint job, love it or hate it, that's about the only thing on this bike that's been changed. It's got a couple of dealer add-ons, but essentially this motorcycle is exactly the same as when it left the showroom floor, and for all I know, the dealer who sold this might have put that paint job on it too. These days, finding a bone stock FXR is so freaking rare that sometimes these are worth more than one that has custom parts on it that are worth money. If we were in California, this would probably be like a $7,000-8,000 motorcycle, but we're not in California. We're in Tampa, Florida at the Ride Factory. Bone stock. Like I said, a couple of dealer upgrades. This oil cooler right here, this 7-inch headlight. I would actually probably get rid of this 7-inch headlight and go to a normal one because I think these big headlights look kind of goofy on the bikes. But back in the day, this would have been a dealer upgrade, so you had better light. This is obviously before LEDs. And then this was a factory Harley dealer upgrade as well. The tachometer and speedometer combo there, but these are stock FXLR bars, stock pegs. This is a stock FXR. FXLR, it's a lowrider. This is a completely stock bike, stock seat. Everything on this bike is exactly the same as when it left the showroom floor. And if you know anything about FXRs, that is incredibly rare. So let's ride this around a little bit and see how she goes. This is definitely going to be a different experience than riding the Krusty Glide, my 86 FXR, which is nowhere close to the shape that this bike is in. I mean, obviously, this is still a bike from the 80s, but this motorcycle is in really, really good shape. It's weird to ride an FXR with stock pipes. Still an FXR, all right. Oh, man. Riding this and getting on the gas reminds me of how much my Evo, how tired my old 90,000 mile Evo is. This thing only has 29,000 miles on it, and this Evo is definitely in a lot better shape than mine is. I mean, these things were never speed demons. It's still just an 80-inch just. It was big back in the day. Oh, that goes, that moves. Like I said, a lot faster than mine, with a lot less protest as well. These bikes were never speed demons, although with a few upgrades, you could definitely make them move. Besides, like I said, besides a few cosmetic upgrades that I think probably got put in at the dealer. To me, these all look like dealer-installed factory options. Let me get this mirror. I know people will be mad at me if I just leave that mirror cockamamie like that. Mirror all cattywampus rolling down the road on an FXR. You're supposed to look cool on FXR, right? Man, this bike rides just fine. It's hard to find a Harley that's a whole lot cheaper, especially where in this good a shape, with these miles and everything works on it, let alone an FXR. 80 miles an hour down the highway, no freaking problem at all. This motorcycle is gonna sell so freaking fast, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up getting shipped out to somebody in California who's gonna freaking just go like, I could buy that bike and sell it in California for like $7,500. I hope somebody doesn't do that, because I just hope somebody buys this bike and just rides the wheels off of it, because that's what this bike deserves. This is a nice motorcycle in great shape
To me, this just thing feels like it's just ready to ride every day. This could be your daily driver. And so that's the weird thing about FXRs is they've now entered this sort of like mythical status where, wow, you have an FXR? It's still just a motorcycle, and they're amazing motorcycles to ride around. They have a few foibles like every motorcycle, not just Harley, like every motorcycle built in the 1980s has. But this is just a great, awesome handling for a Harley motorcycle that's, you know, moderately peppy. It's not going to break any speed records or anything like that. With the Evo engine, which will, with proper maintenance, will run for freaking ever. My Evo is a testament to that. I absolutely whoop on my Evo and my Harley, beat it to death, run it low on oil, redline it every time I take it out, and it's got over 80,000 miles on it and still starts almost every time I push the button. Obviously, it takes maintenance, but it takes a licking and keeps on ticking. And here you've got this thing unabused, in perfect shape. Like I said, I'd probably just change the headlight and that'd be about it. I just leave it alone. I mean, it's got a stock carb and stock pipes on it. I might not even mess with that. I might just say like, dude, I'm literally gonna leave this thing completely stock and unmolested. Let me tell you, when you show up to a bike night on an FXR, showing up on a stock FXR, you're gonna stand out. I'll be honest, it's weird to be on an FXR that runs perfectly. This is a new experience for me. And of course, now that I'm on it, like almost every motorcycle I get on, I have immediately fallen in love with it, and I want to buy it. Let's go ahead and get this motorcycle back to the Ride Factory before I make a poor financial decision. Go ahead and give the Ride Factory a call. You could be going home with this. I have all the Ride Factory's information listed down below. All I ask is make sure, if you are going to buy this bike, tell them Shade Tree Surgeon sent you so you get the best price.
So you want an FXR. You're ready for that S-Class hipster tier bike life, baby. And man, does the FXR fit the bill, because when you show up to the scene on an FXR, you get to be one of those guys who's in the know. You just get to wear a smug smile while drinking your beer at the bar while other dudes school their friends about your bike. Did you know it was designed by Eric Buell, they'll say? Best handling bike Harley Davidson ever made, they'll loudly proclaim. They'll go on and on, extolling every virtue of the mythical FXR to all their street glide riding buddies in the vain hopes that even an iota of your surplus of cool will just trickle down onto them. Yes, revel in the attention from all those boomers who didn't buy an FXR in the 80s because it looked too Japanese. Yep, the FXR is one of the world's worst kept secrets, alright? And being an FXR expert, knowing about the FXR is just about as cool as bragging about knowing the secret menu at In-N-Out. Sure, it'll impress your grandpa, but pretty much everybody else already knows. So what makes the FXR so cool anyway? It follows pretty much the same formula that everything does that eventually becomes a cult classic. It was a great product that was initially unsuccessful but widely embraced by both enthusiasts and the counterculture. The FXR, much like everything else that Eric Buell has had a hand in, was tragically ahead of its time. And also, while I'm at it, let me go ahead and dispel that whole Eric Buell invented the FXR thing, because it was not the brainchild of Eric Buell by any means. While Eric Buell was responsible for a lot of the refinements made to the FXR chassis, he did not engineer that frame. All the FXR frame was, following in the Super Glide tradition, was a beefed up FLH frame with Sportster suspension. Essentially just a tour glide with all the plastic ripped off of it and sporty suspension. It's a factory hot rod, hence the name Super Glide. And the Super Glide concept predates the FXR. It started in the early 70s with the FX, which in the 80s was replaced by the FXR, which in turn in the 90s was replaced by the FXD Dyna. But all these motorcycles, every single Super Glide, essentially did exactly the same thing. They took a big twin engine and frame and slapped Sportster suspension on it. When the FXR debuted in the early 80s, it was actually still powered by the old shovel head, and believe it or not, the shovel level FXRs are starting to command a little bit of a premium because they're way rarer than Evo FXRs. Harley actually had a really hard time selling FXRs because at the time in the 80s, people thought that they looked Japanese. And when you look at that frame on the FXR, you can see why they thought that. That big triangle on the FXR that gives it both that distinctive look and its rigidity, that was super common in Japanese motorcycle frames. Harley eventually gave the FXR the axe in favor of the Dyna, which both went back to a much more traditional Harley-Davidson frame, that big box that they're so fond of, and it was a lot cheaper to produce. And let me tell you, obviously they made the right choice because Harley-Davidson sold a boatload of Dynas. So just because the FXR is discontinued doesn't mean you can't get one. Obviously, there's still a ton of them available in the used market, and by the way, you can still buy an FLH. Guess what, guys? You strip all the stuff off of that Road King I got sitting outside, and it looks just like a big FXR frame. So no, Harley-Davidson never really stopped using that nice stiff frame that had a very Japanese look to it. They just covered it up with plastic and put a fairing on it. So it may sound like I've done my very best to pull back the curtain on the cool factor of the FXR. But obviously I still own an FXR, and despite its many flaws, it is absolutely my favorite motorcycle to ride that I own. I'm just saying this, the FXR is not some mythical unicorn with magical properties. It's just a good bike, man. It handles pretty well, and it's an absolute blast to ride. So, should you buy an FXR? Well, buddy, they ain't getting any cheaper, and they ain't making any more of them. I'll leave it up to you. Till next time, y'all, keep it weird.